Carole Gerson.
Well, I'm very pleased to be introducing Mary Rubio for her wonderful biography of Ella Montgomery. Several years before she published her best-selling novel, Anne of Green Gables, 30-year-old Lucy Maud Montgomery told a correspondent that there weren't just 2 of me, but rather 100 of me. Some of the me's are good, some not. It's better than being just 2 or 3. I think more exciting, more interesting. There are some people who are just 1. They must find life as insufferable a bore as other people find them. Lucy Maud Montgomery was not boring. Professor Mary Rubio has devoted many decades to mapping and analyzing the multiple selves of Montgomery, well known around the world as the author of Canada's most famous cultural export, her novel, Anne of Green Gables, which was first published just over 100 years ago, in 1908. Last year was her centennial, and there was lots of celebration across the country in 2008. Montgomery's millions of readers know that most of her 22 novels and some 500 short stories are set in Prince Edward Island, where she spent the first half of her life. But Montgomery spent her later years in Ontario, where she died in 1942. In the 1970s, Dr. Rubio, who was an English professor at the University of Guelph, became acquainted with Montgomery's son, Dr. Stuart MacDonald, who asked Mary to write his mother's biography and also deposited her diaries at the university. Mary and her colleague, Dr. Elizabeth Waterston, spent many years dedicated to editing Montgomery's journals, whose publication in 5 landmark volumes irrevocably altered our view of Montgomery. Her life was much sadder than her fiction, in which she relegated unhappiness to the sidelines where it shadows her sunny tales of domestic romance. Montgomery's journals were her grumble books. While they revealed much about her complex inner world, they also concealed a great deal, as Montgomery deliberately shaped her own life story as if it were one of her novels. Due to Mary Rubio's long-term dedication, we now have another account which places Montgomery's journals in perspective. Ella Montgomery, The Gift of Wings, shows us, among other things, rural culture in late 19th century PEI, Canadian life on the home front during the First World War, the personalities and politics of the Canadian Authors Association in the 1920s and 30s, and during the same period, very distressing features of medical practice in Canada. In addition to conducting academic research in the usual way by searching archives, newspapers, magazines, and scrapbooks for fragments of Montgomery's life, Dr. Rubio also became an expert in oral history. She identified and tracked dozens of people who had interacted with Montgomery's various selves in different capacities, as friends, relatives, members of her minister husband's congregations, and as household help. Mary's interviews with elderly people whose lives had touched Montgomery's required tact and patience. The stories that Dr. Rubio unraveled about Montgomery's personal relationships were even more complicated than those that Montgomery told about herself, particularly when they concerned individuals whom she found difficult. For example, readers of this biography discovered that the mean grandmother of the journals was also young Lucy Maud's advocate, who enabled her to attend her 1 year of university. Readers also learn how masterfully Montgomery performed the public role of successful author while masking the private turmoil created by her husband's mental illness and her own emotional instability. In telling the full story of Montgomery's life, Mary Rubio also portrays Canada's larger cultural history during a period of tumultuous change. In 1932, Montgomery reflected, "I recently read a statement that a man or woman who was born in 1830 and died in 1913 would have lived his entire life in what was the happiest period of the world's entire history to date. And my generation, what have we not seen? All our old standards and beliefs swept away, our whole world turned upside down and stirred up. Before us, nothing but a welter of doubt and confusion and uncertainty." In The Gift of Wings, Dr. Rubio orchestrates Montgomery's welter of confusion and uncertainty into a wonderfully well-organized and gripping narrative that integrates biography with social history and scholarly analysis. Its importance is being recognized by the millions who continue to read Montgomery's books, translated into more than 30 languages around the world. Thank you, Mary, for this amazing accomplishment.